Trump is having a big week, which is leaving President Joe Biden wondering what he should even do about it in terms of the campaign. The Democratic presidential campaign has pulled attack ads directed at Donald Trump after the failed assassination attempt of the former president by a shooter at his Pennsylvania rally on Saturday. The Democrats suspended a $50 million advertising campaign and pulled television ads that had been planned to attack Donald Trump. A campaign that was already in disarray over Biden's age problem was sent into further confusion after the shooting. Previously planning on verbally attacking Trump over the next few months, Biden changed tones. This weekend, in a Sunday afternoon speech, the president told the country, quote, "We are fellow Americans. We must stand together." He also pleaded for all people to lower the temperature in our politics. The Biden campaign told staff members to, quote, refrain from issuing any comments on social media or in public, and to pause any proactive campaign communication across all platforms and in all circumstances until we know more.
Joe was also set to visit Austin, Texas this week to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, but that was called off after Saturday's attack. The White House has not given a new date for Biden's visit. Meanwhile, for the past few weeks, replacing Biden was all Democrats were talking about, but after Trump's rally, those conversations have been put on pause. A source in the Democratic Party told NBC News, quote, "They were having a very bad political day, and then we had this supernova event. Now it's frozen. If you're an advocate for how do we tell the old man it's time to go, it's really hard to have that conversation publicly. This event blocks out the sun right now." A new YouGov general election poll finds Trump taking the lead in the key battleground states, but the same poll finds Democratic Senate candidates taking the cake in the battleground states of Arizona, Michigan, Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So I don't think anyone's surprised that we see Trump up in the polling nationally. Are Democrats just ignoring that? Is that why the conversation's put on pause? I get that this is a supernova event, but so is having a president that's so old people are questioning if it's Parkinson's.
Yeah, it's fascinating that the attempted assassination of Donald Trump has temporarily just ended almost entirely the very serious conversation that was happening about trying to replace Joe Biden. Now, as I've said many times on this show by now, I always predicted that Biden would not be replaced because he's just not going to exit the ticket. He can just hold on. This was always going to be a tough sell, but they had not deployed every method they had of trying to force him off the ticket yet. You know, people like Nancy Pelosi, for instance, were still on the level of, well, it's his decision and we'll support whatever he does. And then they're told, well, he made his decision, he's staying. And they're like, well, it's his decision, whatever he says, I'm with him. They could have escalated to, he's got to go. More Senate Democrats, House Democrats could have said that. More donors could have turned on him. There could have been more pressure. I don't think any of that would have worked, but they hadn't tried it yet. Now it seems like they're backing off that. The media in particular has just moved on to the next news cycle, being the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, the picking of J.D. Vance as VP, what's happening at the RNC, Trump's pivot toward unity, all of that stuff has ended the Biden too old news cycle for now. Of course, that news cycle could always restart. We're going to talk about the interview that Biden did with Lester Holt a little bit later in the show, so we'll save that discussion. I don't think it was particularly reassuring for anyone, but we'll get into that later. But for now, yeah, they're just they're riding with Biden, maybe because they think there's been some reporting that Democratic insiders, staffers actually don't even think it's now possible to defeat Donald Trump. So why bother going through the drama of swapping Biden only to have if in an unwinnable race? I think that's too pessimistic. It's not an unwinnable race. On the national polling level, yes, Trump is way ahead, but the national polling doesn't matter. It comes down to the polling in these swing states where Trump is ahead. He's increased his lead. He's ahead by more than, in fact, he wasn't always ahead. This is kind of a recent development that he's now polling not just within the margin of error, but well ahead. But, it's not over yet.
It's not over yet, but it seems to be over for the Biden campaign. They seem to be saying we're not going to campaign out of respect for Donald Trump in this time of healing his ear. I get that there was an assassination attempt. I don't think that requires Biden to not celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. I think that's ridiculous. Dr. King was shot over that and he died. I think a lot of people have talked about it in that way. It could be the reality that they're adjusting the Secret Service and the security detail at these events, and they need a lot of time to secure the events.
Well, and they should.
Yeah, I think it's more so about that than about Biden needs a nap. Biden is using this as an excuse to rest and not campaign. I think that could be a factor.
About that?
I think they're like, great, we'll use this as a reason that, it's out of respect for Trump and it's a time of healing and unity in our nation, so we're not going to hit hard the campaign trail. I think it's more so about, yes, on the one hand, security, but on the other hand, they're avoiding gaffes and they're also letting him rest.
Letting him rest. Imagine having a candidate that you need to let rest all the time. I mean, Calvin Coolidge, one of my favorite presidents, was known for sleeping in and taking naps and only working at the White House between the offices, between the very limited hours. And he was a wonderful and effective president, perhaps because of it. So, don't want to knock this too much, but I think in our modern times, it requires a little bit more focus and attention. And there's just no evidence whatsoever that Joe Biden is remotely up to this. Yeah, he needs to campaign if he's going to try to reverse that everything is trending away from him. I don't know, Republicans have very successfully turned the whole that it's your fault that this happened for the heated rhetoric. I think a lot of that, as I've said in my previous comments, is kind of unfair, particularly for Biden. I just call it as I see it. I'm no fan of Biden whatsoever. I don't like his policies. I don't want him to be president again. But when he said, I want to put Trump under a bullseye, that was clearly not a violent comment. In the same way that, and I get that turnabout is fair play and how the media handled these past comments exactly like this when they were uttered by Republicans was reprehensible. You might remember the New York Times and others blaming Sarah Palin, her political action committee that put the crosshairs over Gabrielle Gifford's district in Arizona. They said that was the reason she got shot. Even there was no evidence whatsoever that shooter ever saw that map, that he was motivated by conservative rhetoric. In fact, he was not even a conservative. He was just a crazy person who had a personal grudge against Giffords. But that cycle endured. That so cemented in the media narrative that years later, the New York Times put out an editorial indirectly blaming her that they then got sued over. I think they should have lost that because they won the libel case. I thought they should have lost. It was absolutely libelous what they said. So look, I get it, but my response to all that was that is dumb and wrong and unfair. So now for Republicans to go after Biden for the same thing is also dumb, wrong, and unfair. Got to say it. It just is. Yeah,
I would like to see what we're seeing in the polling in the Senate become reality. I'd like to see the PRO Act pass, but I think the lesson that the Democrats can take away from that is that the senators that are running, or potential senators that are running, are promising that if it's a bill that's written, I'll say, that they will enshrine the right to abortion into law at the national level. And this has become the biggest contention when it comes to Congress this election cycle, is they're promising that they will protect a women's right to abortion nationally. And I think that's really bringing people, to support these folks for the Senate. They would like to see that happen. You have to promise concrete policies in order to win an election. You can't just say democracy's in peril. And so that's a lesson that I hope they'll learn. We've got more rising after this.